Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rabbi Cass from thesofercenter.com. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so when I make future videos about tefillin and mezuzahs, you'll get notified. Today's video is going to be the second video in the series of videos which I'm calling the ultimate guide to buying tefillin. And today's video we're going to be talking about the tefillin straps, the Retzuos. In the beginning of the video, I'm going to be talking about what's available on the market today, the different advantages of one type over another. And at the end of the video, I'm going to be explaining a little bit how the Retzuos are made. So if you want to learn more about the Retzuos, stick around till the end of the video. So the first thing you have to know when buying tefillin, and you're buying, obviously with that comes new Retzuos, or if you're changing out the Retzuos on your own tefillin, is that unfortunately Retzuos that we have available today are not of the same quality that we had even 20-30 years ago. Retzuos from 20-30 years ago could have lasted a good number of years. Retzuos today, if they last 5-7 years, that's a good run. Why is that? Why the Retzuos today last maybe 5-7 years, where in the past they could have lasted 15-20? So as one of the companies that makes the Retzuos explained to me, he said that it used to be 20-30 years ago, a cow would be born, and it would grow from a calf to a cow, whatever the process is, however many months or years it takes. I'm not an expert in that. And then they would, shech the animal, take the skins, and make the Retzuos out of it. He says today, the animals don't have a natural growth. They inject like hormones and things into the calves. This is what he explained to me. And the animals grow much faster. And he said that the result is that the skins which they get to make the Retzuos from are not as thick, they're not as strong, and the leather is just not as good as the leather as it was years past. It's actually funny. I told this to a contractor friend who does a lot of work in the houses, and he says, it's interesting because today also you have the same thing with the trees. You have what's called old growth, trees, wood that you take from the forest that grew over 100 years, whatever, and then you have what's in the tree farms. Today a tree in a forest, the trees don't get as much sunlight. This is what he explained to me. The trees don't get as much sunlight, and the trees grow much slower, and therefore if you look at the rings on old growth wood, the rings are much closer together because it's a much slower process. And he said that wood is so much stronger. It's so much stronger, that wood, versus today on the tree farms, they plant the trees much more spread out, so trees grow much faster. And the wood, if you look at the rings in the woods that you could buy today in Home Depot or Lowe's, the rings are much more spread apart, and the wood is not as dense and it's not as strong as wood from many years ago. So this is what we're living in today, what we call a fast-paced society. We need everything faster and everything quicker, but sometimes we sacrifice a little bit of the durability in the quality of the product. But this is the world that we're living in. So that's the first thing you have to know when you're buying the Retzuos. Don't expect them to last 15-20 years, because even the best quality Retzuo, which I have, and I do have some really good Retzuos, will not last that long. Now, of course, depending on how you wear them, some people wrap them really tight on the arm, really tight on the boxes when you put them away. That will affect how long the straps will last. But even with taking all that into consideration, they just don't last as long as they used to. So before we talk about any of the actual Retzuos, black on black versus black on white, and all the different methods of painting it and dyeing and dyeing them, or how wide the Retzuos are, you have to realize that there's two types of Retzuos. There's machine Retzuos, what's called machina, which means it's done by machine, and then you have what's called Avodas Yad. The main two differences you'll find in these Retzuos, and again they do vary per company and per hechsher, but the main two differences that you'll find is whether the tanning process of the skins is done by hand, which means that all the skins are put into a vat, and either it's on a clock with a electric and it spins it, or somebody actually taking a stick and mixing the skins in the vat. That makes it what's called Avodas Yad. It's done by hand, the tanning process. The other aspect of the Avodas Yad versus the machine when it comes to Retzuos is whether they're being painted by hand or spray painted by machine. Then obviously the Avodas Yad Retzuos typically will cost more because it's a lot more labor intensive. Okay, so if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to show pictures of this stuff when we talk about making the Retzuos, but that's just something I wanted you to keep in mind. Also, a term that you probably heard or may hear is what's called Shpalt. It's the Retzuo. The skin of the cow is very thick, so it's split in order to make the Retzuos out of it. There's what's called the upper section of the skin and the lower section of the skin. The lower section is typically not as strong and not as durable as the upper section of the tefillin. And so all the Retzuos that I sell are Elyon. Okay, so it's the good quality Retzua. And one other thing you'll hear me talking about in this video is the hechsher on the Retzuos, the tefillin straps. Now, just like the food that we eat, we have to have a kosher certifying agency to make sure that all the ingredients are kosher. So too with the making of the Retzuos, we want to make sure that we're using a kosher skin, and that all the ingredients that are being used to tan it and to paint it are going to be kosher ingredients. So it has to have oversight. So you'll find on the Retzuos like hechsherim like Badatz and Moshe Landau. They give hechsherim on some of the companies that I have. And then some of the other companies, they have hechsher from lesser known names, just like from Rabbanim who are experts on Safros and Stam and understand the process of making the Retzuos, will give their own hechsher on other brands of Retzuos. So that might be something also you want to take into consideration when you're buying your tefillin straps. If you want to take Retzuos with a kosher certifying agency, one that you recognize and one that you already trust. So keep that in mind. And with that being said, we'll get on to the actual Retzuos. Okay, so now let's talk about the Retzuos themselves. First, we'll talk about the methods of painting them, and then we'll talk about the different widths for the Retzuos. We'll talk about the advantages of one versus the next, and so you can choose which Retzua is best for you. So the first Retzua, which you see probably is the most common, is it's black from the top side and it's white on the bottom. Okay. Then you have the black from the top, it's painted and it's dyed through and through, so it's black through and through. And then you have this one over here, which is black on the top, white from the bottom, and then the sides, right here along the sides, you can see it's actually painted black. Okay, so the black on the white or the tan Retzua, that's probably the Retzua that you're most familiar with. That's what, if you look at your father and your grandfather's tefillin, that's what they have on their tefillin. However, today you'll see we're seeing more and more people taking the black on the black Retzua. So you see the black, the top and the bottom is dyed. That's what people are doing a lot today. And a lot of times people ask me, they say, what's this black on black Retzua? I mean, like, is it a new thing? Like, I never really saw it 20, 30 years ago. It wasn't like, what's this all about? And the truth is that while the black on black Retzua does have a mucker, I mean, the Arizal writes that the Retzua should be dyed from the inside and the outside. It should be black through and through. It's also brought down in the Rambam that it's nice for the tefillin, for the Retzuos to be dyed through and through. But it's not something that really people accepted and took upon themselves to actually do. And why, I don't know. But the fact is that, for generations, most people just wore the black on white. And the truth is, for that reason, many Gdolim and Poskim will tell you dafka not to use the black on black, just because you're being Mighty Lazal or Shedim, which means you're saying that perhaps something that our father and our grandfathers did wasn't good enough or wasn't right, and you shouldn't act to try to be better than them. So that's a lot of reasons why people reject if anybody rejects the black on black, that's typically the reason why. However, we're seeing today, and I'm going to explain to you the advantage of the black on black, and that will also, I think, explain why today we're doing much more black on black versus generations back they didn't necessarily maybe feel the need for it. I get Retzuos for checking all the time, and often people go too long without checking the tefillin. And what I end up finding when people come to give the tefillin to check is Retzuos that look just like this. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Okay, so here you can see a sample of Retzua that the back side is tan and the front side, I mean, here you can't even tell the difference between the back and the front. But why? Because the paint got all rubbed off. Okay, so I mean, it's a skin and it's painted black. And that's the halacha, that the Retzuos have to be black. That's not written anywhere in the Torah. It's what's called Moshe Messinai, that the Retzuos have to be black. The Eli Rabba writes that he says that the black is a very unique color. Black is a color which shows on Achdus Hashem, because black is a color which absorbs any other color. If you take something black and you put yellow, red, green, whatever color you put on top of it, will be absorbed into the black. And that shows on the oneness and of Hashem, that everything could be absorbed into Hashem. So that's just something I thought interesting that I wanted to share with you. But the halacha is that the Retzuos have to be black. So if you have the Retzuos painted black, and with usage and with time, the top layer of the Retzua, the paint cracks off and fades away, you no longer are wearing black Retzuos, black tefillin straps, and the tefillin are now no longer considered kosher. Okay, so you have a problem. This problem, you'll never have this problem with the Retzuos which are dyed through and through, because even if the outer layer, the top surface layer, which is painted black, does crack or does get faded, rubbed off, because the Retzuah is dyed through and through, it still remains black. So that would be a major advantage to having the black on black Retzuah over the black on white Retzuah. Now, you could tell me that generations back, or even big tzaddikim who had the black and white Retzuos, they were able to monitor their Retzuah, so to speak, and carefully make sure that the top remains black. And if it missing a piece of paint, a spot of paint, they'll touch it up. But I find that today, in the fast-paced world that we live in, people are constantly going, constantly moving, and they're putting on the tefillin and davening, and they're going further. They're not looking at the Retzuos, they're not watching the tefillin. And for that reason alone, I believe, and I'm not alone, I've actually spoke to many Rabbanim on this, there is an advantage to the black on black in the sense that whatever come the scenario, the Retzuos will remain kosher significantly longer than traditional black and white Retzuos, because of that fact alone, that it doesn't get pulsable as soon as it starts to crack. Now, just like the black and white Retzuos, eventually they will stretch and they will narrow, and they'll become less than the shear, or they could start to develop cracks. Let me show you an example of that. Okay, this came in yesterday for checking. Somebody's Retzuos looked like this. Okay, so they'll eventually all do this, black on black, black on white. They'll start to crack, and when they do, that will affect the kashrus of the tefillin, because there's a certain shear width that the tefillin Retzuos has to have. And there's another video where I talk more about that, and I'll put a link for that in the description of this video. But that we'll talk also drop when we talk about the widths of the Retzuos. So that's the black on black versus the black on white. One other thing I will tell you about the black on black and the black on white is, a lot of people think that if the Retzuos are dyed through and through black on black, then it doesn't make a difference if the tefillin, which is on your head or by the arm, if it flips over, because we know that the tefillin are not allowed, the Retzuos are not allowed to be upside down. I've heard from many people, and I think it's a common misconception, well, if I get the black on black, then it doesn't really matter if the Retzuah flips over, right? Because it's still black underneath. And no, that couldn't be further from the truth. The part that goes around the head and the arm must remain right side up. Okay, so the top side has to be face up, regardless of which, if the bottom is painted black through and through. And some might argue to say that, in a way, there's an advantage to black on white then, because if it is on the head, if it's turned upside down, or on the arm, then somebody in shul could say, hey, your tefillin, the Retzuah is flipped, fix it. Versus if it's black on black, maybe nobody would ever notice. So these are just some of the things you have to take in consideration when you're considering black on black versus black on white. Now, the third Retzuah which I showed you, which is black from one side, white from the other side, and black side, the sides painted black as well, that's from the Kosher Certification. And he writes that because, technically speaking, when it's on your arm, you can still see that portion of the Retzuah. He holds that it's important, after the Retzuah is cut, to paint the sides as well, and that's the way he paskins. And those who want to take on that, that shitta, will make sure to get the Retzuahs which are painted on the side black as well. I will tell you that it does. These Retzuahs typically are not as comfortable, because the dye makes it a little bit stiffer on the side, and it tends to have a little bit of a sharp edge over here. So when we talk about the different Retzuahs, there's, like I tell people, what's more important to you, quality, durability, or comfort, because some Retzuahs are very comfortable, but they're not known for their durability. They won't last very long. Some are durable, but not so comfortable. That would be this option here, because of the sharp edge. I mean, every Retzuah, when you first buy it, it's stiff for a couple of weeks, but this Retzuah, a good 2-3 months it takes to break it in. And then I have some Retzuahs which are comfortable and durable. So it really depends on how much you want to spend and what you want to get in a Retzuah. So that's when I sell Retzuahs on the website, I have a very clear item description for each quality. What is it? Is it comfortable, durable? What the hechsher is, because the hechsherim also, they vary per Retzuah. So that's the story with the black on white, the black on black, and the black from the sides. Now I want to talk a little bit about the widths of the Retzuah. The widths of the Retzuahs. The standard width for a Retzuah is somewhere usually between 14.5 to 15 millimeters. That's standard today. You do have another Retzuos. You can see this is a little bit narrower. This is what's a 13 millimeter. And then there's also a 18 millimeter strap. You can see here, this one right over here is even wider. Now I recommend going with at least a 15 millimeter Retzuos. Some people want to do 18. That's nice, but you know, it may not fit on the arm, especially for a young bar mitzvah boy. But 15 is standard. Usually nobody, even the boys, the young bar mitzvah boys, don't have a difficulty fitting it on their arm. I mean, if somebody has a really small arm, then they may want to consider the 13 millimeter Retzuos, or maybe they have a really small tefillin, and the 15 millimeter Retzuos doesn't pass through the tefillin box nicely. It's going to be too squished. Then also we will consider a 13 millimeter Retzuos. But you do have to keep in mind that as the tefillin are worn and they're wrapped around the arm, with time they will eventually stretch. So this is a Retzuos which was once 15 millimeters, and now you can see how it's stretched. So keep in mind that if you do go with a 13 millimeter Retzuos, you know, there is a shear how wide the Retzuos have to be. Okay, according to the Chazon Ish, it's just under 11 millimeters, talking width this way wide. But b'diavad, in order to make a bracha, it has to be at least 9 millimeters. So like I mentioned, they stretch and they narrow with use. So if you get a 13 millimeter Retzuos, you're that much closer to the minimum required shear measurement in order to be wearing kosher tefillin. So the wider the Retzuos starts off, technically speaking, the longer the Retzuos will last. So you have to take that into consideration. You know, if you can't fit the 15 millimeter Retzuos on a boy's arm because he's very small, then you have no choice, you go with the 13. But ideally the 15 is the best option. Now I know that on a lot of the really old tefillin, there's 10 millimeter straps, 11 millimeter straps. Those are, you know, we don't really make them today anymore. You could find them, and I usually recommend changing them out because you're so close to the border on those Retzuos. So the next thing I want to talk about when ordering the tefillin, the Retzuos of the tefillin, is what kind of knots do you need on the tefillin. So there are a couple of knots for the shel reish, but the two main knots is what's called the single daled, and then you have the double daled knot. So I'm going to be putting the knots right over here. So the first knot over here that you see, this is what's called the single daled. This is the knot which is typically used by people who would put on tefillin in Sfard. Chabad use the single daled as well. Many Hasidim use the single knot as well. Then you have the double daled, okay, as you can see over here. This is used by some Hasidim, typically people who, you know, follow Minhag Ashkenaz. Then there's another knot over here, which you see, which is what I think it's Kloisenberg that wears these Retzuos, this kesher on the tefillin shel reish. It's a very unique knot. I don't get to tie it very often. As far as the tefillin shel yad, you have really three style knots. You have the knot which is the minhag of Sfard, which has the loop on the opposite side of the kesher, as you can see over here. And a lot of Hasidim, this is the way Sfardim and many Hasidim tie the knot on the shel yad. Then you have the knot tied according to Minhag Ashkenaz, which is where the loop is on the same side as the kesher, for those who are wrapping towards themselves. And then you have the knot according to Minhag Chabad, which is the loop also on the same side as the kesher, like Ashkenaz, except that it's an adjustable loop and it can be made larger and smaller. So depending on what your background is, that's the kind of knots that you should order, and that's how you should refer to them. But typically when somebody's not sure, I always just tell them, hey, you know, when you come to order your new pair of tefillin or the tefillin for your son or your grandson, just bring your own tefillin along, and if we can't figure out what you want to do, we'll just do what you have on your tefillin, and we'll just mimic that. So that's something that I always tell people what to do. So if you still need help identifying which way you're wrapping, when I say wrapping out or wrapping away from yourself or wrapping towards yourself, this is what I'm talking about, okay? So wrapping towards yourself would be what I'm calling Minhag Ashkenaz. You do go out initially, but then all of the windings are towards yourself. So watch this. Okay? So I'm coming towards myself. This is called towards. You come over the top. When you come over the top, you're coming towards the body. That's called wrapping towards, okay? Wrapping away is the opposite. I'll show you what that looks like. And that's this right here, wrapping towards yourself, minhag Ashkenaz. Okay, and wrapping out away, like minhag Sfard, is this. Okay, as you come over the arm, you're going away, away, away. That is minhag Sfard. That is called wrapping away. So if you need to identify how you're wrapping the Shal Yad, then this is what you need to watch this video so you can see exactly what you're doing. And again, because the way you wrap, that affects what kind of knot you have, right? What kind of knot you need, and that is something that is very, very important when it comes to ordering tefillin. So you have to keep that in mind. Or if you need to get loaners from me while your tefillin are being checked, this is probably also this segment in this video. I will send it to you because we have to identify what kind of tefillin you need to use in the meantime. Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. The tefillin themselves, Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, are different. The Parshios are written differently, and when we talk about the video of the Parshios, which is going to be the next video, I'll explain to you how the Parshios are different. The Batim are different, where the Cyrus comes out from in the Shel Reish, less different than the Parshios. But the Retzuos themselves, Rashi and Rabeinu Tam, are the exact same. Now, with that being said, once the Tefillin Retzuos are worn for Rashi, or once the Retzuos are worn for the mitzvah of Rabeinu Tam, we cannot change them one for the other. Okay, I'm not going to get into the reasons why right now, but they have to Rabeinu Tam Retzuos remain Rabeinu Tam, Rashi Retzuos remain Rashi Retzuos. Black on black versus black on white. There's no preference one for one or one for the other. But when I am selling two pairs of tefillin, like for minhag Chabad, people wear from the bar mitzvah, they're already wearing Rashi and Rabeinu Tam. One of the things that I like to do in order to help differentiate the Rashi from the Rabeinu Tam is I'll do the Rashis, let's say black on black Retzuos, just because I feel that they last longer, and the Rashi tefillin are worn longer, and they get more wear, more usage, and I want to make sure the Retzuos are going to last and live, as long as possible. So then I'll put black on black Retzuos on the Rashi tefillin, and the Rabeinu Tam tefillin I will put a black on white Retzua, and for the few minutes that the Rabeinu Tams are being worn, the Retzua should, they will last just as long as the black on black. But this way you have a clear way to differentiate, because sometimes it happens if you're traveling and the tefillin aren't put exactly how you used to on the left side or the right side, and things get changed around. You could sometimes find yourself wearing the wrong tefillin, and when you have a clear sign as night and day, black on black Retzuos and black on white Retzuos or black on black Retzuos, is much easier to be able to differentiate one from the other, versus if you had both black on white, and then you could write with a marker, a tefillin marker, Rabeinu Tam, on the end of the Retzua, on the back side, you could do that. But the black on white and black is just so much more easy to differentiate. When I do have somebody who wants the Rashi and the Rabeinu Tam on black, then it's much easier to mix things up. Again, the Shel Reish you can always identify after the fact. The Shal Yad, it's impossible to detect from the outside. If you want to learn more about this, I'll put a link in the video, in the description to my video, what's the difference between Rashi and Rabeinu Tam. But something that I do for that is I cut the bottom of the Rabeinu Tam Retzua flat. I think I have a sample of that right here. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so just like this. So I would do the Rashi on the, how we usually do it, like on a slant, and I would do the Rabeinu Tam flat. That way you can still have a way to, because you can't write on it Rabeinu Tam because there's nowhere to write it, it's dyed through and through. But that way you still have a way to identify Rashi and Rabeinu Tam. And again, you just match the flat yad to the flat reish, and that way you have a way to identify Rashi and Rabeinu Tam. You just got to be careful that if you do need to have the Retzuos made a little shorter, then when you do adjust it, don't cut it on the angle. And why is the Retzua cut on an angle? Well, that I'm going to have to save for another video. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you want to know the answer to that question, which I get asked probably more than any other question on tefillin and mezuzahs, is why the Retzua is cut on an angle, or is it a problem if it's not cut on an angle, which now it's not. Why is it cut on an angle? I'm going to save that for another video. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, okay? Okay, so now I'm going to take you a little bit behind the scenes to show you and teach you a little bit how the Retzuos are made, and show you some cool photos and things which you probably would not be able to see otherwise. I just want to show you my what I call my Retzua board with the samples of the different Retzuos that I have. I sell Retzuos from 4 different companies. Really, really good Retzuos. These they vary, like I talked about earlier in the video. They vary in basically the comfort, durability, the hechsher, right? So, you know, you can find them on my website, and you can find the description on the website. If you're having trouble, just give me a call, and I'll be happy to explain these to you. I mean, there's Zonenfeld, Jambarsky, Elbleim, really good quality Retzuos. Give me a call, tell me what your needs are, or find it on the internet on my website, and you can make an order for whatever Retzuos you want. Okay? Now, obviously, it's easier when you do this in person because you actually feel them and see them. But if you're far away, or you're halfway across the country and you can't come into the office, then my pleasure. I'll be glad to help you and make sure you get the Retzuos that you actually need. Okay, so let's get started in talking about the Retzuos, that how they're made. Now, for bar mitzvah boys, I do typically try to recommend people take the softer Retzuo, which is the Shambarsky. You know, that's a really nice soft option. If bar mitzvah boy is starting to put on tefillin for the first time, we want that he should have comfortable Retzuos and just jump right into the mitzvah and not have to wait weeks or even months. Some of the Retzuos are much more stiff, and it could take months till it's comfortable. Here he starts putting on tefillin, and right away it's beautiful and it's comfortable. So I like to recommend those Retzuos. I sell a lot of it, especially for bar mitzvah boys. So if you're coming to me for our bar mitzvah boy, tell me you want the Shambarsky Retzuos, because those are beautiful. I love them. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a little bit how the Retzuos are made, and I'm going to show you some photos from an awesome book which I have, and we'll talk a little bit about the making of the Retzuos, and you'll be sure to learn some cool stuff. So here we go. Okay, so this is a machine, like you see if you can read the Hebrew script underneath the picture. This is a machine which splits the skin. If you look at the Retzuos, they're not very, I mean, yes, every company, they vary. Some are a little bit thicker, some are thinner. I'm talking about the width of the Retzuo here. But the skin on the cow, it's a much thicker skin. So they have to split the skin, or the Retzuos would be very thick. Okay? So this is a machine which splits the skin. You may have heard the term Shpalt. There's Retzuos which is called Ar Elyon, and then there's the skin Retzuos which are made out of Ar Tachton. Okay, the bottom layer of the skin. Now the upper layer of the skin is a stronger skin, right? The lower level is called the Shpalt, and it's not as strong, it's not as durable. This is the vat that the ibud is happening. That's the tanning process for the skins. You can see here, this one is a machine one. You can see there's a machine over there, and that's what actually spins the vat, and the skins are in there with the lime, and that's the tanning process. And here you have a skin, just like that. After the tanning process, it's ready to be painted. So this step, like I spoke earlier in the video about Avodas Yad versus machine, this will be the first step in Avodas Yad. Whether this is being mixed by hand, you see here, you have a machine where the guy is cranking it to spin the vat. Okay, there's another picture of that. Versus, and that's what the inside of the skin's what it looks like. Versus the machine spinning it and doing all that. Okay, so yeah, so this is the skin that's ready to be painted. So this is what it means, painted by hand. Machine Retzuos made by hand, because you have a big skin and the guy has a big brush, and here you can see the bucket where the paint is, and he's just painting the whole Retzuos by hand. Then you have another way of painting the Retzuos. There's a machine just like this. The skin passes through this machine, and as it goes through it, it just spray paints the entire top of the Retzuo, and like that, you can imagine how much faster that goes and how much less work that is, and you know that's why the cost of machine Retzuos are typically cheaper, and it's also not as moder in that sense, that it's not being totally done every aspect of it by hand. That's the skin what it looks like when it's done, and then they hang it on like these oversized hangers, and it stays like that to dry. Now the cutting process is pretty cool. He has a little clip on the edge of the table over here, and he just takes the skin and he goes in a circle, and this can obviously be adjusted, like we spoke earlier in the video, for 18 millimeters, the 15 or the 13 millimeters, whatever size he wants it can be adjusted over here. And then it's just a matter of spinning the skin in a circle as it in order to cut it. And so you can imagine, as you get closer to the core, the center, the circle will be sharper and sharper and sharper. So a lot of times when we get to the end of the roll, that part of the Retzuo, I have to end up throwing it away because it's too curly. But I think I read somewhere once that the Retzuo in the middle is the strongest part of the skin. So it may be a little curly, but sometimes there's an advantage to that curl because it's the strongest part of the skin, the center over there. And this is the way it's packed away, like this. They put it over this and they stretch it in order to try to make it as straight as possible. And you can see a sample of the hechsher that's on the actual Retzuos. Okay, so I hope that was insightful, a little bit how the Retzuos are made. And I'm actually going to show you on my shelf all the different Retzuos, how I have it and how it's packed away. And I'll do that right now. Okay, so here you can see all of the different Retzuos. Right behind me on this shelf, this is where I keep my Retzuos. So right behind me you can see over here, I'll try to get like a bigger pack of Retzuos. Just like this. Now this is Sonnenfeld Retzuos. They have their trademark is the pink foam that they wrap the Retzuos on. And these Retzuos are just amazing. I love these Retzuos. You buy these Retzuos, you're like, they're amazing. They're soft, they're comfortable, they're durable. These are the best Retzuos that you can buy. I love them. So here you can see, this actually was a really big skin. Here you have 127 meters of Retzuos. From one skin, 127 meters on this roll right over here. So this is the way I get it. I get it on the roll. It's really, really long, and then I have to cut it to size. So there's different lengths, like depending on how you wrap. Some people have different hugim to wrap. More than one shin above the elbow. Some people don't wrap any shin, don't make any shins above the elbow. So depending on how you wrap, that's how long the Retzuos you're gonna need. And that's why whenever I need to change Retzuos for somebody, or before I take an order on a tefillin, I always ask you, so how do you wrap the tefillin? Or is the length that you had in the past a good length? Because when I'm making you a new set of Retzuos, either for a new pair of tefillin or just to change out older Retzuos, I can make it any length that you desire, up to 127 meters long. Yes, that's the important thing to know. And also, when you're like, depending on what Retzuos you're buying, like if somebody's buying like the Sonnenfeld Retzuos, which is a really good quality Retzuos, I was going to say that a lot of times people for bar mitzvah boys, they tend to give a little bit lesser length because they figure that they're younger and their arms are small, they don't need the extra length. But depending on which Retzuos you buy, like if you get a black on black Retzuos, like a Sonnenfeld Retzuos, then you could totally, if somebody orders this for a bar mitzvah, I give them adult length because I know that this is going to last them many, many years. So I'm not worried about them, outgrowing it before it needs to be replaced, because these Retzuos will last you. So I hope that this was enjoyable for you to see a little bit behind the scenes and learn a little bit how things are done in preparing a pair of tefillin, helping you make a decision for what Retzuos you're going to choose for your tefillin. Let me know. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, be sure to subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of good content coming, great content. Listen, the more subscribers there are to the channel, the more encouraged I am to make more videos. So if you learned anything in this video, share it with your friends. Let them join the family. I'll see you on the next video.